So good afternoon or good morning or good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for joining in this webinar regarding integration to NAV 2013 to 2018 versions. With me today, I have my good colleague Dan Kristensen, who is our product manager on integrations in general in Dynamicweb, and in particular between the Dynamics product offerings and Dynamicweb. The agenda today is there's a lot of new faces, therefore I will just give a short introduction of Dynamicweb. Then I will dive into the principles behind the integration between Dynamicweb and NAV. And then I will hand over the screen to Dan to do the demo. And at the end of the session, there will be possibilities to ask some questions and get some answers if you want to know some more. So I already see a hand is raised here, but does anybody have a question here? No, if I don't, or else we will leave the questions until the end of the session so we don't get breaking up the whole time. So shortly about Dynamicweb. Dynamicweb is originally a company founded in Denmark, in Aarhus, a country residing beneath this small star. We have become global during the last years, and today we employ more than 130, 140 people covering more or less the whole globe. We work as a software vendor. That means that everything that we do is with the purpose of building Dynamicweb as a software application better and better to make our partners implement solution based on Dynamicweb. If we just look at the map here a little bit, you will see we have some offices in Vladivostok far to the east, and we have some offices in Los Angeles far to the west. Vladivostok is core development and Los Angeles is sales. So it's more or less, it's both technical as well as sales offices around the globe. Today we have approximately 4,300 customers running on Dynamicweb as an application, and that is handled by a global partner network consisting of more than 220 certified partners. So what do we do as a company? We started out as a content management system, making a CMS, and next to that we added the e-commerce functionality starting already in 2001. That means that we have done e-commerce next to our CMS for almost 18 years. And in 2011 we added the marketing suite, where it's possible to personalize the content both on the e-commerce as well on the CMS. And it's also possible to do email marketing campaigns using Dynamicweb as one application. The newest thing that was added to the platform was the product information management system. Having done more than 400 integrations into NAV, we have seen difficulties in enriching product information in an ERP application. What for it made very, very good sense to also add PIM as a part of our offering. Everything resides in one application, and that also means that we track everything that goes on a website that is hosted by Dynamicweb, and that means that we can track what people are looking at in the CMS, utilize that information to show relevant products in the e-commerce, and also utilizing that information to set up automated marketing campaigns using the data of the specific user. In terms of the integration part, which we're covering today, you will see at the bottom of Dynamicweb we have a framework which is built on top of our stack. We are built on a .NET platform, which makes it a standardized technology delivered by Microsoft. So in terms of the principles when it comes to integration, then the whole idea is to make it easier and make it less risky to integrate between the NAV, which we have on this side, and in this case we are covering the versions 2013 to 2018, by trying to standardize how we integrate between Dynamicweb as an application and the ERP system. So you should imagine now that on this end, we have a design, we have some features and functionalities that could be both B2B and B2C. So whatever people, when they come to a platform or to a website that is made on top of Dynamicweb, they will see some features and functionalities here. Everything that is inside of Dynamicweb, that's as a database, and then we have the front end and we have the features and functionalities of the platform, is possible to integrate into the backend system. So what we as company deliver in terms of this is a connector service, which makes sure it has two purposes mainly. The two purposes is to deliver and receive XML from the NAV system, the backend system here. And the other purpose is to lift the information over the firewall or through the firewall. Dynamicweb comes in multiple versions, and that means that we have a roadmap that is defined, and that is not only for the application here, it's also in terms of the integration. That means that every time we go from one version in Dynamicweb to another version, our responsibility as a software vendor is to make sure that we also lift the connector service so it will be able to scale your business as it goes along. What you as partners will have in addition to the connector service plus the Dynamicweb application is a code unit for the specific version of NAV that you are working with. It's just a piece of .NET code which exposes a web service inside of NAV, and that web service will deliver XML to the connector service, which will then take over the communication to the front end. On the other hand, if a customer logs in, let's say it's a B2B customer, then we will ask on a live basis, who is this customer? Which products should he be able to see? Which prices does he have? Does he have any information about his old orders, credit notes, invoices, and so on and so forth? So we work, when it comes to integration, we work with two types of integration: a live integration, which was the scenario I just described to you, and a batch integration where we move information on a periodical base. That means that we can set up flows for example, transferring information like contacts, users, accounts on a batch basis, typically more static data, whereas stock, prices, availability is on a live basis. The plugin or the code unit that we as a company deliver to our partners is a .NET code. It's open source, so you can fully extend the code unit depending on the customer's needs. So that's the principles of the integration, but the most interesting part here is also to show how it works in a live mode. So Dan will come into that in just a few seconds. So just to sum up what I've told already is that the idea of us making an integration framework is to make sure that you, our partners and customers, get a high starting point, and making sure that we have already built some integration endpoints where you can get data back and forth between the systems. There's two databases. That means that we have a database, SQL database in Dynamicweb, but we also have a database in the ERP. If the ERP is down for maintenance or whatever will happen, it is possible to run Dynamicweb as an application being independent on the ERP being live. The code that you will have is open. That means that the customer will probably have a need today, but in a half a year he will get new needs. You can extend that code because it's fully open to you. We will of course update, we will add new features and functionalities. People will also maybe move to Business Central, and that also means that we will also have code available for newer versions of NAV, now called Business Central. Having said that, we have everything in one application also means that you will have very few integrations. You will actually only need one integration to do both websites, e-commerce, product information management, and marketing as well, instead of working with multiple integrations and multiple applications. And the last and the sweetest thing of this is it's built on .NET technology, and that means that a lot of you partners will be able to work with this from day one. In terms of the demo, which is the important part of this, I will now change to Dan, my colleague, who will then take over the screen here. So just a second.
Yes. Right. Do you see my screen? And do you hear me? And perhaps you can speak on behalf of everyone, brother.
Yes, I see your screen, and
Wonderful.
I can hear you.
There you go. Okay, so I'm product manager of integrations, as brother mentioned at the top, and I'm going to do the live demo for you today. I'll be demoing across 4 themes. First one is working with customers. What do we actually import into Dynamicweb? And there's also a piece about importing salespeople. Then in newer versions of NAV, there's an option to categorize products instead of using product groups and assign them attributes like width and length and color. So I'll show how it looks when you import that over to Dynamicweb. Then for pricing, it's related to custom pricing and discounts. And then stock is specifically centered around stock or inventory per product per location. So the location part, splitting it up in various stock locations, is a new thing we've been working on. And then finally, we've made some improvements to the customer center in the way we show invoices and credit notes or credit memos and so on. So without further ado, I'll jump into NAV. And I'll begin with a customer. So I'm looking at the customer records, and the first one I want to bring your attention to is Spotsmeyer Furnishings. And this particular customer card has 3 contacts. The first one is the company itself, and the 2 other ones are employees, so Andrew and Mr. Mike. So when we talk about customers and integrations and so on, we want to have a login on the website for all employees of a company, so multiple contacts per company. So we want, in this case, Andrew and Mr. Mike to be able to log in with their own login credentials and act on behalf of their company, meaning the company will be billed, but they can do separate orders. And to achieve that, we also need to know where to ship it to. And if I look at, for instance, Andrew, I happen to know that apart from his primary address, he also has an alternative address. It's Manor Road in Cheltenham. And I hope the screen is updating fast enough for you guys out there.
Yes, it looks fine.
And for the company, apart from the primary contact, there are also 2 ship-to addresses. So second and standard, one in New York and one in Birmingham. So if I go to the front end and I log in as Andrew, and manage addresses there, then I'll see the company address, the primary address of Andrew, his alternate address, and then the 2 ship-to addresses. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means if I go to the shopping cart, the company will build, and I can choose any of these ship-to addresses coming from NAV. And just to show that Andrew and Mike are indeed separate entities, I'll log in with Mike as well and take a look at his addresses. So again, we see the same company address, a different contact address because that was different, and the two ship to addresses, but not an alternate address because Mr. Mike does not have one defined. So they can indeed act independently from each other. Now I want to go to, the back end of this website, because I want to demonstrate to you that Mr. Andrew and Mr. Mike, you see them here, have two different external IDs but have the same customer number. So yet again, it is the same company that is billed and it is the same customer number but separate logins. If you use the standard code unit, all customers will come into a user group called customers, and then there's one called sales. And if you take a look at this list, there are 8 salespeople, and that's because they're also coming from NAV. So again, if I look at Spotsmeyer Furnishings, the customer company, there's a salesperson associated with each of the contacts, and that's the salesperson code is JM. So if I look for sales, the sales team in NAV, let me just find it. Salespeople. You see the same 8 persons and JM. And if you look at what contacts am I associated with, let me just, you can see Mr. Andrew, and I'm sure if I scroll up, I would find Mike as well. So that's the connection. So essentially, if this were your NAV, your customers would be able to log in and act on behalf of whatever customers you have on record or is associated with that salesperson. So he would be able to order in their name and so on and so forth. All right, so that was working with customers. Then I want to show you item categories and attributes. So yet again, I will go to NAV. And I'll search for item categories. So in this particular NAV, there is a parent category called, well, I apologize for any non-Danish audience. So this basically just translates into office furniture. And this is office desks, which is a subcategory, and miscellaneous desks, and chairs with an armrest. So if I go back to the front end, here, you'll see that same categorization being migrated over. And if I go to a specific item, let's take the Harris guest chair, then it has various attributes defined. So one for color, depth, width, height, description of material, model year, and a test attribute that I created. And let me just take a look at it here. So yet again, all these values are migrated over to Dynamicweb. Now you don't have to use item categories and attributes. If you happen to use them in NAV already, you can get them over. If not, then we can also just import your products without any kind of categorization or attributes. So it's an option you have. Then I want to talk about pricing and stock. And For that, I'll use a different customer called Rebel Furniture, represented by Mr. Nikolai Carlsen. This particular customer have 2 sales line discounts defined. So I'll demo both of them. I'll begin with the first one here, which is for the part number 1908-S. And I'm going to get a 20% line discount. First off, I'll sign in with Mr. Nikolai Carlsen. And then I'll find the matching part number, London swivel chair 1908-S. And you now see that I get a special discount, which is, if you're good at math, 38 times or 0.2 divided by 191 will give you 20%. Then I wanted to demonstrate the other product, and let me just empty the cart just to keep our focus on one product at a time. So I'll buy 4 of these to begin with. So nothing changes here. I just multiply the list price with 4 and I get a total. But if you go back, it would trigger a 10% discount if I bought 5 or more. So if I increase this to 5, I'll get a 10% discount. So 4.52 is indeed 10% of 45.2. Now, some of you might have noticed that the list price changed because it was 600 something before, and now it's 9.04. And that is because the NAV is using Danish kroners as the local currency, whereas the currency used on the website is in euros. But I'll just show you that the exchange rate for euros is 5.5289. So if I say 50 and divide by the exchange rate, I do indeed get 9.74. So no magic or no cheating involved. It's just a different custom price for this customer when he buys 5 or more. So that was custom pricing and line discounts. Then I wanted to show inventory per product per location, and it's actually not something I can show in the front end. It's only an advanced feature that we have available in the code units. Don't really mind what I'm doing. I only expect 30 or perhaps 50% of you to know exactly what I'm doing here, but I'll come to the point or the takeaway in a moment. All I'm doing is I'm querying the code unit on the NAV, and I'm asking for product stock for all stock locations. And I'll get something back which is barely human readable. Now it's a bit more readable, but I still don't expect all of you to know what's going on. Now, what I'm looking for is a part number called 1900-S. And if I just find the first listing, you can see that there's a quantity of 52 in one stock location. I can find the next one, which is 41 units in another location. 160 in a third, and 46 in a fourth location. This can indeed be imported into the database, no issues. All I wanted to show you is that it is the correct numbers. So if I look at items, I look at that item, 1900-S, and I query items by location, I get the same numbers indeed. So 52 in one location, 41 in another, 160 in a third, and 46 in a fourth. Okay, so that information is available and can be imported into Dynamicweb's database. And then right now it's up to your front-end developers to use this as you would like to use it in the front end. All right, so that's pricing and stock. And then I want to show the improvements to the customer center. So again, I'll use Mr. Nikolai Carlson. So what you see is a list of orders, a list of invoices, and a list of credit memos. And the new thing is that you now get invoices and credit notes out of the box. And you also get a lookup in a paged style, meaning in this case, we've set it up to only grab 4 orders at a time. So each and every time I take a new page, there's a separate request being sent to NAV. And we did this because if you were a customer and you had like 200 or 1,000 orders, a long history, it would take forever to load the page and log you in and so on. So that has changed or improved quite a lot. Then you can also view all of these as a PDF. So this PDF is generated by NAV. And just to demonstrate how well integrated it is, I want to bring your attention to this credit note, so a credit memo ending in 02. And if I go back to NAV and I look for posted documents and credit memos, you have it here ending in 02 for Revel Furniture, which is represented by Nikolai Carlson that I'm logged in with. And this particular credit memo has been printed out 25 times. And if I now view this one and go back to NAV and I click refresh, then you can see that it now says 26. This shows you 2 things. It shows you that it is indeed being generated by NAV, so this is a legit credit memo, and it also shows you that I've rehearsed this quite a lot of times. Yeah, so that was the customer center. I have 2 more slides, and this one is primarily there to show you that there are more features in the new code units than the ones I've demoed. So I've only demoed a few of them. And also, if you take the first line, so 1 code unit per NAV version. So if you've ever worked with our old code unit, you would know that there are only a few of them, and if you added it to a newer version of NAV or an older version, you would get weird warnings, which looked like it wasn't really a legit code unit. But now we've separated it out into various code bases, so it's compiled for a specific version. So it's easier for you to achieve plug and play ability. And also there are slight variations between them. So for instance, you can only really get item categories and attributes from 2017 onwards because that functionality was not in the older NAV versions. And there are also slight variations between the way we generate PDF documents, because that's also changed throughout the years. So that concludes my live demo and feature walkthrough. So for next steps, we'll distribute all the 4 code units and the connector service after this webinar. And there's a link for the installation guide. And if you want a trial license, then you can reach out to Brother. And if you want to know more, you can always contact me or Brother directly. So, okay, no slides, but there's we now open up the floor for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
It seems that you have been extremely clear, Dan. So there's no questions coming in here. But nevertheless, thank you very much for your time, Dan, and to all the participants. Thank you very much for joining. Now a question comes in.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
Peter Gem. Hi, Peter. He's asking, could you give me any information about Business Central connection?
Yes.
We expected that one, didn't we?
Yes. Well, we feel like we have the entire code in place. We've actually in progress with the submittal process. So we're submitting it to Microsoft through AppSource as an official Dynamics 365 Business Central add-in. And there are, I mean, we are really close. So I don't want to say it's 2 days or 1 week, but it is close. I want to show that we can get it through officially before I really release the source code. But if you want the source code now and you feel like you're better able to get it through than us, then you can always get it. And just a quick summary of what we've done: we've essentially removed any. So it's plain AL code for those of you who know what it is. So it's not the old CAL code, and whatever .NET interoperability we used, we've stripped that away. So we're using pure AL code because that's the primary requirement for getting things on AppSource. And we are shooting for a connector service, or sorry, a connector that will work either with the on-prem versions of Business Central, but also the cloud versions or the Azure hosted versions.
Now more questions are coming in, Dan. So I would like to move on. How old are the code units? When were they last updated?
So the new code units that we're going to distribute are, I mean, weeks old. So much of the functionality that I showed in the live demo is new functionality that we did not have in the code units before. But it's old technology. I mean, the code units that you'll see are based on the old code unit. They're written with CAL code, and it's for large parts it's the same as the code from 2013 and so on. So it's both new and many years old.
Okay, thanks. Next question. Any support for single sign-on on Azure AD for both admin and backend? I'm not sure I understand the question, but you probably do.
No, I think so. For some reason, I can't see all the questions. Whoever is asking that, please shoot me an email directly, and we'll take a look at it. Well, I know in general terms what obviously I know what the Azure AD is, but I still want to know what is the exact problem or the problem.
It's Philip from Every in Sweden who's asking, but I'll ask him to send you an email.
Yes.
Okay, I see, Philip, that you got it. Next question: any special handling of freight? I've quite a few variations of this so far.
Well, it's definitely one of those things that we want to look at. So essentially, we want Dynamicweb to be able to control what happens inside the ERP system. So essentially, we want Dynamicweb to be able to calculate freight and then feed that back into the ERP system. But we also want to do the same for discounts. So we actually want Dynamicweb discounts to change the order price, and that's actually first in line. So the priority is we want to figure out how Dynamicweb can control discounts, and then we want to figure out how we can control freight or shipping costs. If the question is if we're going to support NAV providing shipping costs, then please shoot me an email and state what is the need, because it's certainly not something we've considered before, and I would like to know what the need is before I commit to anything. But it could be something we look at.
Great. The questions just keep rolling in. That's nice. So what about support for NAV 2016? That is Olaf asking.
Well, we have the code unit compiled for it. It's a silly reason, really. When we set up all the test systems, we couldn't get a hand of a 2016 environment. So all the QA and all the tests and so on we've done couldn't be achieved on a 2016 version. So I do not want to release that. So that's why they're not distributed with after this session. But there are people running on a 2016, and I have helped to support it. So if you have a special need, we can send it to you. But it's probably going to take a while before I release it as an official release, because it hasn't been tested yet. Yeah.
Okay. Any ETA on that one, Dan?
No, because it's not on the roadmap. I think whoever needs it, contact me, and if it's fine that it's just as is, then you can have it. And if you want the full integration team support behind it, then you will have to wait. I don't have it here. I would expect it's within a month, but let me know how much you want it. There are other priorities.
Okay. Next question: is the code units created in-house or externally, and will they get updated regularly?
They are maintained and developed in-house, especially the move from CAL code, which is the old way of doing it, into the new AL code. That has been done fully in-house, and we fully in-house, moving it to app source and getting it approved by Microsoft.
And how about updating it on a regular basis?
Well, for the AL code or the new code units that's going to be on app source, I mean, our hands are tied. I mean, as soon as we release it, we have to update it, because people using it on Azure would get automatic updates to the ERP system, and if they can only skip a new version of the ERP system 2 times before they lose their support deal with Microsoft. And if we don't update our code unit, then the entire ERP system will flash red. And so we have to always keep that updated. I would say for the NAV code units, I don't have a specific date yet. We haven't really decided, but right now when we release a new feature, let's say, you know, we want Dynamicweb discounts to change the order price inside NAV. That feature, if we want to roll that out into Business Central and all versions of NAV, we have a lot of code bases to now maintain. And there's going to be a cutoff point. I don't know if it's a year from now or 2 years from now, but at some point we cannot maintain the old code units. But it is not just coming, and it's not within the next half to a full year. So we'll maintain all of it at least for a year.
Okay, that's great. Next question. That was just a second. Christopher is asking, can you also use price books and price breaks for customers? I'm not sure if you understand the question, but I hope so. If not, then maybe he can elaborate.
I think we need to take that offline. We are still, you know, becoming better and better at all NAV functionality. So I don't know if he's referring to specific NAV features. So I think we'll have to take that offline. Yeah.
Christopher, you can write me an email. I know which company you represent, so if you just write me an email about the specific needs, and then I'll make sure to talk to Dan about this. Okay, I think that more or less covered the questions here. So if no more questions appear, then I think we will just round off here. It has taken 15 minutes too long, but thank you very much for all your attention and your questions. Always nice. I'll also get smarter on this one. So thank you everybody, and have a nice afternoon, nice evening, nice morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you very much.